Angela Pilgrim serves as a board member of Frontline Arts in Branchburg, New Jersey, and her contributions to the artistic community are very impressive. She has received numerous grants and awards, including the Newark Artist Accelerator Grant in 2020 and the 2023 Creative Catalyst Grant from Newark Arts. Angela frequently participates in residencies, leads workshops and lectures across the country. Her work is held internationally in both public and private collections, including at the Newark Public Library, Petrucci Family Foundation Collection of African American Art, and Metropolitan Museum of Art. Recent group exhibitions include Black Histories, Black Futures at the Museum of Fine Arts, Boston, and the Gadsden Museum of Art in Alabama. So please join me in welcoming Angela Pilgrim. Angela, thank you so much for being here tonight. I just want to congratulate you on the show. It is beautiful.
Thank you.
I thought we might just get started with finding out a little bit more about how you got into printmaking.
All right, so like I've told many, my introduction into printmaking was kind of like a, I wouldn't say it was luck, but it was chance, I think, but it was also fate at the same time. So I was pretty much working in illustration, I was working in painting, I was dabbling in embroidery, I was trying all of these different things to kind of express the type of work, you know, that you see today. But I wanted something that would challenge myself and to kind of do something different. So I was getting a little bit bored. Yeah, so I was getting a little bit bored. So I saw an open call for a residency at the Newark Print Shop. And this was in New Jersey. At the time I was living in Hackensack, New Jersey. And I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna kind of, you know, just jump into it, see if I'll, you know, get accepted. And I did. And what came with that opportunity was a 6-month residency to work in the community print shop. And the only exchange for being there would be just to donate a little bit of your time for an open print club night. So typically this Newark Print Shop would offer screen printing, kind of like open studio to the public for $10 on Wednesday nights for 4 hours. So I was kind of like a studio manager or studio instructor for these 4 hours during the week. And I shared the residency with 2 other shop artists, and they had to kind of donate their time as well. So we would actually show everyone how to screen print, from, you know, preparing your work to, you know, sourcing exactly what you're going to print on. Some people actually brought in t-shirts and tote bags and things like that. There was a lot of business owners and people who wanted to kind of start businesses. So they would come with their design, we would show them the Photoshop aspect of it, we would show them how to prepare their screens for silk screen, and then we would show them, you know, all the necessary tools and, you know, tips and tricks to actually, you know, print their work. So that was really cool, and I was learning at the same time. So, you know, what I learned in that opportunity was that it was a way for me to kind of give back, and it was a really great time, I think, in my life, because it was kind of life-changing in a way where I was learning something new, and at the same time, I was giving it to others. So that's just a little bit of...
Was there any particular moment during that time when you had like an aha moment, like, oh, I found my medium?
I would say yes. I had kind of a clear vision of what I wanted to do. One of the things that I wrote in my proposal was that I wanted to print on fabric. And from there, you know, working with fabric is like really, really interesting, right? Because, you know, it's not the same as printing on paper. So it was a little bit even more challenging. So I guess my aha moment was when actually got I printed a really beautiful print, and it was my first print, and I was very proud of it, and I said, hey, like, I mean, printmaking is like magic, like, you know, you don't know what it's gonna kind of look like until the end of it. You just know that you have kind of a clear vision, and it may look like entirely different. And I had to get okay with that too in the process. So my aha moment was actually seeing my print come to life. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Kind of like seeing something come out of the kiln, right?
I was just thinking about that fire, and it's like, yeah, throw it out there and let it go.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm not sure people really understand this, but printmaking it involves a lot of heavy equipment. And it often is a barrier for people to get into the medium. So how, so far, have you been able to navigate this sort of equipment issue in your career?
Well, you know, my genesis to printmaking, I was really blessed to have created relationships or maintained relationships over time where folks really loved what I was doing. They loved the work, so they donated a lot of equipment to my studio. And you know, that was monumental in me kind of continuing my practice outside of a community print shop, because at some point it was like COVID and, you know, things shut down and we didn't know where the state of the world would be at that point. So I've met some really, really beautiful people in my journey, and they always kind of believed in me, and I've been blessed to have found those people, and they just, you know, 2 of my exposure units in my studio was actually gifted to me from a print shop in Brooklyn. Yeah, it just, people kind of wanted to help. You know, you'd be surprised because it's community. Printmaking is so, community is so essential for printmaking, and it can't really live unless there's a community around it. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Very, very lucky and blessed, as you said. So clearly, I mean, community is a very strong driver in your practice. Are there any particular mentors that have influence on your perception and also appreciation of like a shared printmaking environment?
Yeah, so when I first received the opportunity to get this like new, like I was just so like laser focused on this is something, it had my eyes bright open, right? But aside from that, there was a really prolific person that I really have to kind of give a lot of, I have a lot of respect for him because he was very patient with me, even in my frustrations, but his name was Stephen McKenzie. And he was the shop manager there, but he was also a master printer. We spent a lot of time in the print shop, just pretty much learning how to, you know, my biggest thing was I needed to look exactly how I wanted to look, right? Like it has to look like, you know, the colors have to line up. They have to be within the lines. Like, you know, what can I do to make this print, you know, more perfect than, you know, than I can ever imagine, right? So he was really monumental for me because he kind of gave me so many tricks, so many tips, so much encouragement in the time that we spent there in those 6 months, and expanded, you know, beyond that. So yeah, Stephen McKenzie. Yeah, so. And I just want to mention, Stephen McKenzie was like, he was an interesting character because he would just come into the print shop on like rollerblades, and you know, and he would wear this, you know, all these like poppy colors, and you know, and he was just, you know, so encouraging, so so soft, so, you know, patient, and really like I owe a lot to him. So.
That's awesome, and I know you're giving it back tenfold as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's so funny because if you noticed, she mentioned perfection a couple times in that statement, but you also describe your work as very experimental and improvisational. So how do those two sort of conflicting elements benefit your method of working?
I think it's growth. I think it's learning the process. I think earlier in my career was learning the process and then breaking the rules of it, you know, doing something entirely different. You can get exactly what you're going for and still, you know, have fun. When I first started, I was having fun, but I was so fixated on it being like really, really perfect and, you know, how I want. I had to kind of relinquish that control over the process. So it's allowed me to feel like I can play. And I didn't notice that, right? I didn't, you know, I remember Stephen telling me, he said, it's always great to go back to play. And I never really grasped that concept until I started kind of just being, you know, experimenting with different techniques and going back to things that I've loved to do, like, you know, whether it was painting or whether it was, you know, illustration and making it in a kind of building on a lot of the building blocks of where I wanted to be at a certain point and I was aspiring to be. So I think play is really important. I think that was a really big, that was really, really monumental in me experimenting, yeah. And I have fun. Like, I have to have fun. Like, if I'm not, then it's just a job, you know, at that point, so.
Yeah, I mean, it totally shows in the work. I was hoping you could share with us maybe some of your technical process, because there's a few different techniques going on in the works here. Some of our audience may be more familiar with others, but for instance, the transfer prints. They are much more labor intensive than one might assume.
Yeah, absolutely. So all of these works, it was at some point, and I'm just going to kind of make this as a disclaimer. My hands were throbbing making these works. I just want to say that. Like, I was like, oh my God, do I need to go to like the hospital? Like, you know, and it is labor intensive. I didn't kind of know that at the time when I was learning it until I really kind of saw what it could expand to. So in terms of the transfer prints, I actually learned that technique at Robert Blackburn in New York. So I took a class on monotype and transfers, and essentially transfers are the process of, I like to call like printmaking, we're doing transferring anytime in printmaking, but there's different ways to do it. This is just one. So it's basically, you know, taking an image, taking the image that you've created and using a process where you're kind of stripping the ink from the paper. So for instance, for these pieces, they're digital paintings. However, when you print it on a laser printer, the oil-based ink that's in the laser printer is stripped by putting a substance called citrusol. Some people use acetone. Other people use wintergreen, I believe. But when I learned at Robert Blackburn, it was with citrusol because it was not as toxic as the acetone. So basically, you would, you know, print your image, you would turn it over. Everything has to be in reverse because when you turn it over and you have like kind of like your surface where you're going to print, you turn it over and you put the citrusol over it with cotton balls. I started doing it with a sponge because my pieces started getting bigger. But basically you're kind of dousing it and then you're taking a bone scorer and then you're actually transferring it. So you're rubbing. And it's pretty much leaving your impression on the paper, which is pretty much the basis of what printmaking is. There are different ways you can do it. There's, you know, monotype, where at Robert Blackburn, I learned how to do monotype by taking water-soluble crayons or watercolors and putting it on plexiglass. And what you're doing is you're taking this really, really big press and you're kind of putting it on the bed of the press, and there's like a steel drum that would apply pressure. You put your paper over the plexiglass, and then the drum, as you kind of feed it into the drum, it would leave an impression on the paper. So that was, you know, monotype. Your paper has to be wet, typically, and then you can also build with other techniques over that. So it can get really intricate, it can get really layered, just depend on how far you want to go.
It's awesome. I mean,
I hope that, like, you know, explains it, because sometimes it's hard when you don't have a visual, but yeah, essentially that's what it is.
I just imagine you like scraping for hours and hours and hours.
Absolutely, and to get this size, like traditional laser printers only print on 8.5 by 11 or 11 by 17. So I would have to tile the images to get them larger.
It's funny, we've had a few visitors already come in and ask if some of these were color pencil drawings.
Yeah.
Because of that sort of transparency you're getting.
Absolutely, and that's the magic of printmaking, because sometimes you have, when I saw that happen in front of me, I was just like, wow, like this is it, like absolutely it, you know, so.
So how do you decide which pieces to use like that transfer process and then other pieces to stick to a more traditional like screen printing process?
I think it's just if I want to do it or not. Really, because it's so labor intensive. So do I want but you know what? Screen printing can also be labor intensive as well. It just depends, because when you're layering color, you have to think about how inks are going to interact with each other. There's ways where things can be transparent. There's things that can be solid. There's details that can be put into it. And just getting up to print actually screen printing, like you have to do all these processes before you get there. So I would just say it's whatever I'm feeling at the moment, or what I feel as though would translate what I'm going for, whatever medium. Yeah.
Something that's really interesting in these works that you can see in the Aunt Eva piece and the Leslie piece and JMAC and this piece as well, is the interesting fabrics that you're laying on top in that collage style. How do you just have like a whole plethora of fabrics that are at your disposal?
So, interesting enough, they're actually paper. They're handmade paper. But what I wanted to do was I wanted to source papers that look like fabric, because I would love to, work with more fabric. I was just telling Carol that, but I never really got a chance to. So I've been sourcing a lot of papers that look like fabric. Like for Aunt Eva, that's Japanese lace. That's Japanese lace over there as well. And these papers are coming from Japan, or they're coming from different countries, Nepal, and so it just depends on kind of how I want things to kind of look on top of each other. And what I love really about the paper is that it also gives you a way to kind of layer the same way as you would do a silk screen, and then you have that transparency come through, so it gives you more depth and things.
So the Aunt Eva piece is really detailed. How long do you think it took you to create that work?
Maybe like 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Yeah, because I have to kind of go back to it and figure out, okay, this kind of works. Okay, composition wise, how much more processes do I want to include in this? When is it ever finished, right? Because work is never finished, really. You just have to kind of stop yourself. So it can vary depending on how many different processes I want to kind of include in there. I really love collage as well. So I wanted to kind of go back to that as well, too, for these pieces. Yeah.
That's awesome. So, obviously as you've grown as an artist, your work has changed. What inspired you to bring in, your family and your friends into this body of work?
I wanted my work to be more personal. I don't think that, a lot of my career I was talking about different aspects of what the African diaspora was, right, or is, but I wanted to kind of tell my own story. I wanted to be a little bit personal. I wanted people to kind of connect with me more as an artist. I'm very rooted in family. And for this show, I wanted to incorporate more figures that actually, inspires me. And for people to kind of get to learn a little bit more about, other aspects of who I am. Like with this piece here, in 2023, I've gotten more, I've had a lot more anchoring in my faith and what that looks like, on my journey. Always, even in, any type of trouble or any type of, anything that comes your way, being grateful, having gratitude, with the good, bad, or, you know, even good things, you know, so.
Well, you mentioned this piece over here, and it's one of your self-portraits. I always find it really interesting when artists use the self-portrait because it gives the viewer like a much more intimate connection with the art. So what sort of drives you to put yourself out there in the work?
I think that I'm very, I wouldn't say that, I want to say I'm very private, very private. And so I want people to kind of get to know me a little bit. And I've never really like did a lot of like portraits of myself. And it's kind of like a looking glass for me to kind of learn a little bit about myself as well, you know? There's different aspects of me I was trying to learn through my art, but as I've grown, I think I've gotten a little bit more boldly expressive of, you know, showing more parts of who I am aside from like, you know, my hair or, you know, the things that you see, but like what is the inner workings of who I am, and getting people to kind of connect with that in a way. Yeah.
It's so interesting. Angela and I were speaking the other day about your public, private, and secret selves. I would love for you to just expand on that and how you sort of come to grips with those ideas and how they're present in the work.
So it's interesting. I was scrolling on TikTok and there was a private investigator who said that everyone kind of, when he's looking at, you know, investigating a particular person, he said that everyone has three sides to themselves: a public self, a private self, and a secret self. Most people don't really show their secret self. You may be able to learn a little bit about people's private self if you do a little bit of digging. And then people, you know, they wear their mask, they wear who they are on the outside. So I started thinking about that concept and I said, okay, well, what does my private secret self look like? You know, what are some things that people don't know about me if they look at me? The figures in my work, you know, how have they shown up in the world? What have they shown others? What have they shown me? And my perspective is that I've learned a lot about the people that I've included in all of this work, because I guess like I've done the work too, in a way, you know, especially like with my family, learning a little bit of history about my family, learning a little bit more about their personality, and what does that look like to me, right? My perspective. So they have, you know, way more, you know, sides to them, but this is my perspective on who they are. So, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, we spoke a little bit about the Aunt Eva piece, but what about the piece of your mom? Can you share with us a little bit about how that personality is coming through?
Yeah. So my mom is a very interesting person. You know, she is. I think I've learned more about my mom growing up than I did when I was younger, because, you know, when you're young, you don't know any of those, you know, things like that, you know, she may be kind of harboring, or, you know, how she shows up in the world may look entirely different than, you know, how she showed up for us. Before motherhood, what did she look like? Before she had kids and had to, you know, be the person that was, you know, taking care of the kids. My mom's been a single mom, like all of her life, right? So who was she? And, you know, learning about her, how do I see her if I was there during that time? And I see her as, you know, being resilient, having a lot of different, you know, dreams and aspirations that may have not materialized, but may have, you know. So I wanted to kind of represent her proud, having this new kind of like lease on life. And my mom is right there, by the way. But also, you know, her kind of seeing herself, right? She cried when she saw that piece because I think I really hit the nail on the head with it, and it's how she's always seen herself, and maybe people haven't seen her in that light. So I wanted to kind of show that perspective of how I see her.
It's really beautiful. Can you tell us a little bit about the two portraits behind her?
Yeah, so basically the portraits are kind of her, I guess, how she maybe had seen herself, maybe more fluid, maybe not understanding kind of like what's her mark in the world. And I wanted to kind of incorporate that because I don't think that she sees herself in the way that I see her. And it's kind of like a love letter to her in a way. So, yeah.
It's awesome. I mean, I love also how you're sort of referencing printmaking history in the back with those pieces that look almost like woodcuts or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually silk aquatin. I took a class at Frontline Arts last year, and I wanted to kind of make these like painterly, portraits, or just really, really fast portraits. And I learned from Len Merlot. He was leading the class, and he actually showed us how to create silk aquatin, not only in a print shop, but you can actually do this from home. And it was a process that it took all day, and it was pretty simple, but it was nice. It was fast. It was different. Again, I'm looking for the feeling of doing something new, to kind of keep that reward. You have that kind of sense of reward in your head when you learn something new, and also challenge myself. So
that's great. So this body of work really speaks to identity and the human condition, self-expression, and self-discovery. And it also casts all of these themes in an exceptionally joyful light. So I'm just curious, how much does your faith and spirituality keep you rooted in this sort of positive light?
Yeah, I think it's an anchoring. It's a foundation that I learned that I kind of needed in order to kind of press on in this world, in my practice. I'll tell you something about my secret self, actually. I've prayed before I actually make these pieces, because I think that also helps me connect with the subjects, and also connect with the higher power to give me the gift. I have a gift to do this thing. It's not that it's like egotistical, but I have my hands, I have my feet, I have my faculties, and I don't take that for granted. So, yeah.
That's so important, and there's definitely a few makers in the room, so I know process is very important to you. Can you just elaborate on like how that process melds with your sort of outlook on life?
Yeah, I think process is, we go through a lot of different processes in life, right? Like today, like we got up and we got, ready, or we had to do certain things to get to this point. So I think it kind of like a interconnectedness with just, living life, and, being process driven allows me to be able to at least see some type of semblance of what I'm trying to create, and it's needed in order to get to a certain point. I love the process because the process is more so for me. This is what gets me out of bed, but the art is for you. That was actually quoted by Rashawn Rucker. He's a Detroit printmaker, and I heard him say that in an artist talk that he did, and I really had that aha moment. It's like, yeah, like once I release it into the world, it is for others, but the process is what kind of drives me to continue to create, because I just love it so much, I'm really like involved in the process. I love composition, I love color. I love colors that look great together, or evoke certain moods. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, speaking about color, this work especially, I think, really exhibits this sense of serenity that you describe in your own life. How do you come to decisions with these colors?
Well, one, I love pastels. That's like, my favorite color is purple, but I love pastels. I love pink. I love pink because it's very feminine. I love, it could be masculine too, actually, if you think about it. But, I really love how colors kind of, the colors look side by side. Like a lot of times when I'm actually working, I'll put this piece of paper here and then put it next to that paper and see if they look, right. And then sometimes, color can kind of change the mood of the piece. I want these pieces in my work to be very lighthearted, to be fun. They can be very serious and cerebral. I've been told that in the past. And maybe that was their perspective, but I think it's a great balance to the pieces as well. And it's also, personally, I like looking at them, so like I love the colors, so.
Yeah, they're great. So when we were talking, you mentioned that Emma Amos was a really influential artist in your process and in your work. And I'm just curious, like, what elements of her life or her artwork have been really most influential to you?
Yeah, so as I started looking into Emma Amos' work, I learned that she incorporated a lot of different processes together. And again, I go back to, it's really fun to kind of put all these elements together, but she incorporated painting, she put fiber arts, she's done silk aquatint. Actually, she's learned probably everything she needed to know about printmaking to just express what she was trying to express, political issues of her time, how she saw herself in the art world. I thought that was important because she was giving art history. And I went to an exhibit in the Philadelphia Museum of Art. I think it was about maybe like a year or two ago. And I don't think it was a retrospective, but she definitely had all of her work there. And as I was looking closer at these pieces, I was seeing the layering, I was seeing, there were simple things, right? There was just paintings, but then there was a lot of large scale, quilted pieces or a lot of these different materials and raw materials that she included. And she also worked at Robert Blackburn, which was really cool. But as I saw that she was kind of incorporating all these things, I said, yeah, I definitely want to, make sure I'm cross-referencing different techniques and, experimenting and just kind of building from there to kind of tell my story. So Emma Amos is like probably one of my favorite printmakers like ever. I love Elizabeth Catlett as well, but I think especially I love Emma Amos, and I'm so sad that she passed. Yeah, so and she taught at like Rutgers, Mason Gross for years, and I don't know why. Like maybe I just wasn't there yet, but
well, you're there now, so that's not bad news. Sorry? Oh. I'm good. So I thought it was really interesting. Something that I learned about you was that you're really interested also in writing and writing poetry. And one of the poets that you reference in this body of work is in Rest Reserved for Angela, Rest Reserved for Angela over here, is Lucille Clifton, who is really well known for writing physically small poems with enormous and profound inner worlds. And when I read that, I thought it was a perfect connection to your work because these aren't massive pieces. They're great size, but there's so much in them. So where do you see like this poetry and your own poetry sort of combining with this artwork?
Well, before I was ever like a visual artist, I remember I used to kind of carry these like poetry books. So I would like kind of just, it would be family functions, and I would just sit under the tree and just like write these haikus. And it helped me kind of connect with the world around me. I used to write about nature a lot because I learned a lot about nature, how calm it was. I love water, I love being here because the beach is right there. But I think poetry kind of gives you a foundation of a place to build upon. It's another kind of way that you can think about imagery. So, words, create images in people's minds. And I think kind of, studying these different writers and kind of understanding where they were and how they interacted with the world around them kind of brought me back to that point where, I thought about my own poetry and how I interacted with the world as well. And so for poetry, I think it just kind of creates a foundation. I don't know if I'll kind of keep writing or anything, but I know that, you know, once you write something, like it can be a poem, it could be a poem that rhymes or not, but in my sketchbooks I write different, you know, abstract ideas and, you know, sketches and things like that, and it kind of creates a foundation for the work as well. So.
Yeah, that's great. And I know you mentioned that most of your sketches are actually words.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Good. That's awesome. So I know that I mentioned briefly, Angela teaches workshops. You've done all your own sort of everything out there. And I know teaching is extremely important to your practice. So what advice might you have for a budding printmaker?
I would say fall in love with the process. Have fun. I think that's the biggest thing, and always find ways to have fun with what you're doing. Learn what you have to learn and then break the rules of what you learned. And then kind of carve out what that work would look like for you, because it doesn't have to necessarily look like the traditional way of doing something, but it can, you know, build from there and look entirely, you know, different than what you've seen in your head. But I think the biggest thing is just having fun and learning from really good people who, you know, care about your practice. I think that's important. So it's the people you surround yourself with too.
Well, you're one of those people now teaching others how to do printmaking, and I know that community is a huge, huge part of your practice. So I was hoping that you might inform the audience on your exciting news about the grant you received for this upcoming summer.
So, very exciting. So I received a grant from Project for Empty Space, which is pretty much a nonprofit in New Jersey, in Newark. And basically, it's kind of like it's an opportunity for teenagers in the city of Newark to study at the Newark Public Library about activists and change makers and important people, prolific people of Newark, synthesize what they found in the museums, in the library's archives, and then pretty much printed matter. So that can be on, you know, tote bags or shirts or things of that nature, just paper. But they're going to be learning the process. So, you know, there's a research component, there's a process component, and then there's a presentation component for their family and friends at the Newark Public Library. And I felt like this would be a really great opportunity for people to kind of, you know, step their foot into the world of printmaking the way that I did, which is through community. You know, you have to have access to spaces that care about, you know, you kind of adding a skill set to the world, and that can blossom any way you want, and it kind of gives people, you know, the teens at least some type of vision or a skill set that they can use for, you know, years to come, whether they want to, you know, work in that skill set or not, you know, but maybe they'll love it too as much as I loved it. So looking forward to that. When I get back to Jersey, gotta go shopping and get everything, all the materials and things like that. So yeah, we have 4 lucky teenagers actually that we're going to be teaching. So me and my husband actually, Allison. Yeah,
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah,
That's really cool. So outside of that, what future plans are in your work?
I think just continuing to build my body of work. Continuing to experiment, continuing to learn, and see what the boundaries of what I can do and push them further as much as I can, and also maybe get into some more museums, you know, so that would be great.
Yeah, for sure. So just as we're sort of rolling up here, as the viewers, as the audience here, what is the heart of Rooted in Spirit? What do you hope that we take away from this exhibition?
I think I want everybody to kind of look within and think about themselves a lot more deeply than what they've, you know, maybe have, you know, shown into the world. What does your spirit look like? I feel like spirit and identity are interconnected in a way. But also there's those aspects of ourselves that we kind of, put forward. What does your foundation look like? How do you show up in the world? What does your spirit look like? My spirit looks like family, so what does yours look like?
It's beautiful. The work is beautiful, and congratulations again on the show.
Yeah.
But please, if the audience has any questions, yes.
Okay, so you just mentioned your goal of getting more works in museums. So what style of work did the Met purchase, and how did that come about? And congratulations.
Thank you. So again, I was kind of experimenting with different printmaking techniques. There is a process called risograph, which is essentially you're working with like these really, really big, they look like industrial printers, like that you would see at FedEx or something, but they have these drums that have these oil drums that kind of print your work. But essentially it's pretty much like a printer. But at the time, I was a founding member of Black Women in Print, which is a national organization that pretty much gives visibility for printmakers, Black women printmakers. And at the time, we had a portfolio that was called Continuum. So basically, we were taking inspiration from past printmakers, Black women printmakers, and kind of putting our spin on a lot of the different processes and, let's say, the different themes of what they were trying to achieve in their work, but, in our own way, right? So I chose Emma Amos. And Emma Amos, she did these quilted pieces, she did all these printmaking techniques, but she also had a notorious way of putting like these African border fabric around her pieces. And so I pretty much did that around mine. My work was about Black hair, and I did it in risograph at Project for Empty Space. I think it took me like a week or something like that. And risograph, that was actually my first time doing it. So again, I'm like, just jump in. Like that's how I am. Just jump in, just do it, and I'll figure it out once I'm there. So that piece was acquired by the Met, but all of our pieces, they were in a portfolio box. They were acquired by the Met, and then they were put on display for the Power Portraiture exhibition. So they actually acquired it, and it's in their private collection, private
And it's been exhibited there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So. It should be on the website. It should be. Yeah, for sure.
That's great.
Yeah.
Congrats on that.
That's very
Actually, it was really interesting because when I went to the exhibition, there was a guy that was standing there, and I was just taking my pictures next to the work, right? And then he was like, "Wow, 1991, pretty young." I was like, yeah. And then I think my husband was just like, "Yeah, actually, you're looking at the artist." He was like, "Oh wow, congratulations!" So it was real interesting, But I like seeing more young artists in museum spaces because it's just saying that there's a space for younger artists there, and to help them kind of continue the dream and things of that nature. So
Yeah, you don't have to die to be able to
No, you don't. No, you don't.
Convince my daughter to save everything.
Yeah. No more dying, just to show it.
So how were the 4 students selected that are going to be working with you in the summer, and how long is that, and what is,
So essentially, we put out an open call. This was on social media, newsletters, things like that. Luckily, I've worked with other educators who kind of was, encouraging some of their students to, apply. But me and Al, we did a interview process with them. There was an online form, making sure they could commit to the time, telling us a little bit about them. But then the interview was just kind of to see if it was a good fit. And we found 4 people, and I think the range is between 18, 13, I think it's a good range, but it's for 14 to 18 is kind of small, but but we've got people, teens around that age, so yeah, regarding permission.
How did they apply for that?
So it's through a form.
Through a form?
Yeah. A form.
Did it feel like a write-up?
A write-up, there was a couple of questions about, why they wanted to, seek out this opportunity or want to be a part of this opportunity. Have they done printmaking in the past? I wanted to kind of give an opportunity for teams that did not do it before, because, I got someone go in there and, know what they're doing, but I want to give, teams an opportunity to learn the way that I did, where you come in and you don't know what's going on, but you're going to be guided by 2, people who care about you and care about what you create. I think, I don't think we didn't ask for like website or anything like that. It was just more so to learn about them and their process, what they've been doing already.
That's so cool. I want to be one of those 4.
And this actually happens at my studio downtown. So it's Newark Public Library and then my studio. So.
Is it an intensive, so it's like a full week, or does it run like
So
summer?
it's 4 Saturdays. So it's for 2 months, but I didn't want to make it too, stressful. It is the summer, and it's like, kids, sometimes they have things to do, right? That age. So I wanted to kind of create the opportunity for two Saturdays in April and May. And then there's also an exhibition day, which is May 31st. And that's at the Newark Public Library. And then we have a local photographer makes beautiful work, who wants to come in and actually take photos of the students and their work, and just kind of give them that confidence to kind of present their work to the public and their family and friends and things like that. So yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing. I've been working with the Freedom School here in Sarasota every Saturday. We've been offering Black History lessons.
Oh, nice.
So we're now looking into some summer activities, so
Nice.
we may follow up.
Yeah,
It's very interesting. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, most definitely.
So I saw on Instagram that you have like a mural in Newark recently.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So
Yeah. So
as my question for you is like, what does that mean? Is it in Newark? Is it in Newark?
it's in Newark. Yeah.
What, like, as an artist, like, what was that like to experience like your artwork in your community? And like, does that take you back to a time where you maybe wanted to see representation in that way? So yeah.
Yeah, so that opportunity came really, it was an interesting, I just have these interesting ways of how things come to me. So, my day job, working for a nonprofit, my supervisor at the time, he recommended me for pretty much just like this, there was these shipping container homes that the work was actually going to be in this community. So in the city of Newark, there's a lot of ending homelessness initiative by the mayor, Ross Baraka. And my supervisor, he recommended me on kind of like a town's meeting or something like that about, because he knew I did art. And then for some way, my supervisor was in the room with the director of Project for Empty Space, and they both recommended me at the same time. So that's kind of how that happened. And so this mural was kind of like a gift to the city. So there was kind of, essentially it didn't get to the shipping container homes, but it actually found, I feel, in my opinion, a better home because it was actually a long-term opportunity. But it's for this shelter, this homeless shelter in Newark. And it was really cool because they wanted work to represent the community and kind of uplift the people that were in the shelter. Family, hope, stability, things like that. So creating, imagery around, what that looks like for me, but more so what that could look like for them, because that's what they were seeking in that opportunity. So that was great because I've always been in a position to want to give back in some way, and to continue to do that. I think I'll always continue to do that because that's just where my genesis of my practice kind of started, at least like my real practice, I feel, in my way. So.
Okay, but how did you know how to do that?
I mean, so you're on a lift here.
So,
and there's many stories.
So that was through dye bond. Dye bond is a material. I didn't paint the mural. That was all through Procreate.
It was all through what?
Procreate. It's like a digital kind of like painting thing.
Okay.
So dye bond is basically like this material where you print the work. You print the work on this material that's kind of like fabric, but it also kind of adheres to the building in a way where it's almost like wheat paste in a way. And then it has to be.
What's it called? Dye?
Dye bond.
Dye bond.
Yeah, I didn't source the materials.
questions.
Yeah, I didn't source the materials. There was a whole team that did it. So I didn't really have to do anything other than, create the piece. However, it was adhered. I came and said, "Oh yeah, let's
We're in the
go."
future,
Yeah.
we don't have to.
Yeah. I don't have to get any lifts because I had a nasty fall a couple years ago. So yeah. So basically, it was adhered to the building. I think there's a UV gel that goes over it as well because when
It's 60 feet tall.
yeah.
She's like, they don't want to go out.
How many pieces was it printed in?
So from my understanding, it was tiled. So the team, what they did was they printed pieces. They painted over it because it was kind of like a ghost print. They printed over it. And then what they did is they took these pieces and tiled them together on the wall, but the background was actually painted, and I wanted a gradient, so they did that, and it took them a long time. I felt so bad. They were just like, oh my god, but they did that, and then I think it took them maybe like a week. Because the thing is that they put up murals in the city of Newark all the time, so they found ways to kind of do it, fast and efficient. So they're really great to
Pressure clean the walls first and
prep. Yep, all that. Yep, prep, prime, all that. Yep.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I think it was a team of 3.
Wow.
We can't get bridges fixed. What is it?
Well, thank you for that, for sharing. I spent some time in Newark, just doing work with youth, and I know that probably affected a lot of families, and
Oh yeah,
just
absolutely.
to be able to feel seen in that way. I'm also a public art muralist and also a public art curator. And the big question is there's not a lot of women in murals. I'm like, there's so many women that do murals, but that visibility is important and representation is important. So thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's really cool to see.
Yeah, and the thing is that mural spoke to me too, and that opportunity spoke to me because I was working with a sector in Newark that were homeless. So my day job is literally helping people to be housed, stably housed. And, I went into it because, I really I felt for them, in a really profound way. And so that's kind of how those all building blocks kind of came together and the opportunity came to me. So it's very full circle for me. So I have these, I have these experiences where things just happen. I don't know, I'm there at the right time or it's fate or I don't know, but.
Rooted in spirit.
Yeah, rooted in spirit. You gotta stay positive. Yeah, for sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Angela?
I have one. This space in the middle really spoke to me in many ways, very deep way, but I was also curious about your decisions on the materials you used in it, the upper piece.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
was wondering what you were feeling about that when you added it.
I wanted to kind of include the central part of the character is kind of speaking about kind of her past, what that looks like. The past can look like shadows of yourself. But also I wanted to kind of again, it kind of speaks to a lot of the work that I have. I like the transparency of the papers that I'm using, but also, you know, sourcing paper that actually looks like fabric is really important to me. But it's titled Yesterday's Girl because yesterday's girl is not today's girl. And we're always kind of ever growing. We're always ever changing, and what we look like in the past may look vastly different than what we present in the future. And we don't know what the future looks like. We are not in the fourth dimension, so you know, it could look like anything.
So the section at the top, the green lines, the green, what do those symbolize for you?
Still the same kind of like theme of just shadows and self and, you know, identity. They're very abstract because your identity can be abstract as well.
Well, we have those three parts, right?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
it's almost there.
Yeah, absolutely. So.
Fascinating.
Please, ask away.
Angela, how did you end up here?
How do I end up here?
Really good
I
question.
just want to miss something in the beginning. You brought one to apology.
Yeah.
How did we find you?
How did I find her? The internet, I guess.
Oh, you found her.
Yes. Yeah.
What's your job? It's amazing.
I mean, I really wanted to showcase a printmaker, and we have just a couple of opportunities per year to get people from out of state, and it just seemed like kismet.
Well, thank you to you.
Yeah. Did you have a question, Carol?
Just more of a comment. I really admire your use of the papers. Paper is actually fabric.
Yeah.
It's another form,
Mhm.
actually, most of it.
Mhm.
And what I really am enjoying is what you mentioned earlier, the layering, but it retains a real lightness, a delicacy that I don't think would be as easy to achieve with actual fabric.
Okay.
And I think for this style. you know,
Yeah.
And maybe for that portrait, because her dress is more saturated in color.
Right.
But
Yeah.
most of it, I think you've made a really smart and painterly choice in terms of using the papers.
Yeah.
I'm also thinking that portrait might show certainly private life, but I'm thinking it's probably hinting at some secret life too.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I don't want to know the answer.
That's okay.
Story.
That's okay. No, I welcome all interpretations of it. Arlene's cross is really special to me, and I'll divulge a little bit. So this piece right here is of me and my husband, which his last name is Lane, so Arlene's cross. Arlene's cross, and how we met was really interesting because we met in the print shop. And I wanted to kind of show people, I don't show a lot of people the private self of who, you know, my relationship, or at least my intimate relationship, but I wanted for this show to kind of show that, and how that kind of keeps me rooted as well. It's really important to me because we've been together for so long, and we've learned and grown, so yeah.
Following that comment, I have to say, when I looked at that piece and saw that you could put mesh on top of what you had printed, I just lost my breath. I was like, that is brilliant. It's so soft, and yet it adds another dimension to it. It's just stunning. It's really beautiful.
Yeah, for sure. So that's actually bookbinding fabric. Yeah. So I was in the kind of like the art store, and I was like, again, I was trying to source materials that look like I sewed it, or, you know, I did some type of weaving or something like that. And then when I found this paper, or this fabric rather, and actually collaged that in, and it still kind of gave me the dimension of kind of seeing through and the transparency. I thought that was like, it blew my I wanted to use it in everything. I'm like, yeah, and I was just going crazy with it. So yeah, I hope to kind of source more of that. Again, I'm still learning as well, so.
Have you ever made your own paper?
I have once. I have, the way that I learned, it was like this paper beater. It was like really industrial. And one, I don't have the space for that. In my studio, I have like 250 square feet of space. However, when I learned, it was at the print shop. It was when they moved to the second location. And I was really fascinated that you can actually use jeans.
Yep.
Yeah, jeans and, all these different things. And it didn't smell too good either. When the water was in there, it didn't smell too good. So, it's like, okay, this is cool, There was an artist at the time who was actually incorporating like real hair into the paper, which was kind of cool. So it's like different ways, like people put like the twigs and things like that in there. But she was actually putting like real hair that she kind of came like sourced from the barbershop and putting that in there and telling her story. I thought that was cool. But that was only one time, and it was like I made a couple pieces, and I was like, okay, this is cool, But how do I print on this, Because it's bumpy, But yeah.
You can actually do it without the beater. All you really need is an immersion blender, and then once you boil the fibers, you just smush it up. I feel like Apica would be a beautiful addition to your works.
Okay.
It's like a sort of a beigey kind of.
It's the same paper that they make tea bags out of,
Yeah.
but you can buy it on these big rolls.
It's beautiful.
And it
You
prints
can make it
nicely.
so thin.
Wow.
It's
Yeah,
very thin.
really cool.
That would
But
be
it
really
takes
cool.
color really well.
It does.
Yeah. Do you need a lot of space for that?
No, I mean really, you just if you get the immersion blender and then a couple of restaurant tubs, and then you just need the ones what do they call it, the decal.
Look, I'm
right?
always learning. Look. Yeah, I'm always like, okay. And the thing about me is I'll learn something and then I'll run with it. So you gotta be careful because I'll just take it and I'll just keep going. I'll get obsessive over it. So
You can
And
actually
also-
buy a kit at Dick Blick to
Oh.
make paper. Yeah.
Really?
And it also shouldn't smell bad. They
Okay.
probably just had it sitting for too long and the
Yeah,
mold
yeah,
was
yeah.
starting to grow.
Yeah.
Okay, that's encouraging. Because I've had her experience.
Yeah, I was like,
man, that stuff stinks.
yeah, and it kind of, I was just like, okay, if it's like this, then no, I don't want to, but.
It can be very fun. Well, any other questions for Angela
I
today?
just wanted to say, you mentioned that you hope that we would be encouraged to reflect, to go inside.
Yeah, absolutely.
And for me, certainly the overall experience, it's very meditative. It's very, this room, the space has become that.
Yeah,
It's like take out these chairs and put some, I don't know,
Yoga mats?
mats.
Yeah.
And just without reading or hearing or anything, just observing. There's a wholeness about it
Yeah,
that really converts the wonderful sense of the tranquility that I need so badly, and I think
yeah.
other people do too, so thank you.
Yeah, and may I say, I'm hopeful that you guys take away that you can see a little bit of yourselves or little aspects of yourselves, within the piece. Thinking about your identity, thinking about family, thinking about, what growth looks like, how life can be experimental, a lot of those different elements, so.
So could I ask whether or not this show was the kickstart for this group of work? Or
It was, definitely. I knew at that time, I was like, I gotta step it up. Like, I gotta step it up, I need to be more raw. I need to be more, revealing if I'm going to continue on this path of, setting my foot kind of like with these certain techniques, it has to be something that is going to be really deep and really rich, that people can connect to, et cetera, et cetera. So it's just the beginning, so.
Well, I think it's extremely successful and beautiful, so thank you so much.